7 out of 10. I beat Metroid Dread in a total of 7 hours and haven't really touched it since, but that's not going to stop me from sharing my opinion, as every time I see a review for this game, I just feel more and more isolated about the critiques I have for this thing. But an additional note, this video is not for people that haven't beaten the game yet. For newcomers, I'm not going to tell you to avoid the game. I said a 7 out of 10. Please just go and support this entry into the Metroid series. At its best, Metroid Dread is a loving return to a classic format. Before I get into what brings down the score from an 8 or higher, there's some things I want to bring up. I never played many of the Metroid games growing up, but if I had, I could tell Dread would have gotten me super excited for this next release. What gives me the respect for Metroid, and why I was so excited when I saw the trailer, is that I have a huge love for RPGs. That's a lot for my stuff, is I like number crunching and things like that. In this case though, it's a lot more streamlined towards just actually experiencing the upgrade as you progress. And I'm fine with that. I really enjoy that. And for people like me that's unfamiliar to the series, at least like in terms of its core elements, a strong aspect of Dread that I really love is its fluidity and controls. Now, I've essentially been a PC shill ever since I've gotten my 3080. That's why it took me so long to get used to Samus's arsenal on controller. It's so many, like, my fingers had to stretch in ways I haven't been used to doing. There are few games that can make you feel the essence of a three-dimensional first-person shooter, while in reality being a 2D platformer. That fire rate being dependent on how fast you press the button is absolutely insane, and I wish more games did it. Having recently finished the game, I have to say, I understand why people were so upset with having to wait this long, but with the graphical fidelity we have now, this deserved to be a Switch title and not a remake of something made years ago. I don't know if you have had this vision for Metroid 5 if it was made all the way back then. And the development of the story is so satisfying, especially given how long you had to wait, and it wholly improves this game's quality. If I didn't care about the story, I'll admit, it would be a 6 out of 10. But the time you spend with Quiet Beak, or the infestation of the X-Parasite, it just feels that vibe of watching cartoons on the weekends and learning about new story developments. For me, anyway. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but I can't imagine anyone's complaining with what we do have. Also to note, the atmosphere and visual essence of Metroid Dread, it's not as dark as the title would suggest. It hits a very good spot. For those who plan to revisit ZDR for years to come, I can't imagine being bored with the locations. The power of modern tech truly allows for something like a Super Metroid remake to sound absolutely nuts, especially versus 10 years ago. And the last thing I want to bring up is the E.M.M.I system. This aspect of the game does kind of get lost, at least in terms of like the horror factor of it, but it's masterfully implanted into your mind, and every time you see a door leading to the E.M.M.I area, you know you're in for something. Even if you don't even remember that you killed that E.M.M.I already, it's just nuts to be like, oh no, not like this. And the AI for these things feel really immersive. And when you successfully hit that parry, it just feels good to stun them and get out safely. I do wish they carried a bit deeper into the game as like horror monsters, but it's satisfying nonetheless. And that's where I'm going to stop my positives. I know there is more I could say complimenting a lot of what the game does. If I was doing a video essay about what this thing masterfully did, I'd have to ignore the negatives, and this video is more about that. But see anything I didn't mention as something that I didn't consider, didn't think through enough of, or I do like but just didn't bring up here. I want to start off this critical commentary on Metroid Dread by stating, I've completed most every entry into the Souls series. Sounds insanely unrelated, but I just want to elaborate on the experience of playing a Souls game in this game overlap a bit. I'm going to be making some comparisons here and out. And also to say, hey guys, I don't have a problem with the hardness of this game. I have a problem with the difficulty, just not in that direction. But, kicking it off, number 1. As I progressed through Metroid Dread, I felt I was only matching the environment's strength, even if I got a significant beam upgrade with super missiles. This does change if you decide to hunt items on your own, but that moment can either be way later in the game, it could be right away, and the issue with that is that you'll miss out on a lot because you'll see how to get certain items, like, oh, I need some other thing for this, but you could be waiting a long time to actually get that item because a lot of it is about going through the same areas over and over again. And I know there's a huge community dedicated to speedrunning and sequence breaking, yes, but using the term sequence break, it understands that there's a sequence unbroken, and that's the casual player's experience with Metroid Dread, even if my version of that experience is different to yours. Near the end, once you have everything, I finally felt like I was ready to explore and grind for pickups, but as I did say, it's near the end, and the final boss is just an elevator ahead of me. I want to reiterate that these comments are from the mindset of someone who is very unfamiliar with this series, so I just want to reiterate that. These comments may bounce off sounding like a veteran or a lover of the genre, but I'm neither of those yet. It's also why I'm not using the term review in the title. I don't think I'm qualified enough to consider it a review. I want to talk about it and I'm giving it a score, but referring to it as a commentary, I hope people understand that that just means I want to talk about it and elaborate on my issues, but this is a very loose version of a score. I think it's a bit more kind to people that was like, how dare you call yourself a review and give it a 7, even though it would obviously sound insane to most people. Back to the core topic though, with the amount of items I had before Ravenbeak, which, just so the percentage is on screen right now, I had to ask myself, why would I go back and get everything if I could beat the game like this? And I did. It took me a couple tries hitting my head against a wall, but I figured it out. And I'll be honest, did ruin part of the fun for myself. I did Google how to fight Ravenbeak going into it, because I was already so annoyed with so many bosses just pulling out moves. I'm just like, what am I supposed to do about this? In the process of learning, it just wasn't fun to me, so I was just like, okay, what do I need to do? Because I still had to do it, and that alone felt pretty good. But going back to that question, veterans would obviously answer with, well, yeah, I want to get everything. And that's why I wanted to say there's a separation between me and those veteran players, but I wanted that to be just clear and on the table. I just don't understand what a newcomer would find motivating about going and get the rest of the items if they could just beat it. And maybe that's part of the question, is that maybe it's not really meant to engage the newcomers. It's a game for the veterans. And that's fine, but luckily, this is not the end of my critiques. I personally think collecting, though, had its own caveats, and it had some unfun puzzles that, in the end, I think I was just ready to go. I did spend another couple hours collecting, but that was just because I had a fun idea of, let me try to fight the boss with every upgrade. I did stop after like a couple health tanks, and I realized I wasn't the biggest fan of the structure of the speed boost puzzles, and collecting more just wasn't feeling worthwhile. For a slight diversion though, Dark Souls 2 has this really stupid issue, and alright, listen, don't let me lose you yet. I wrote an entire video essay on that. I gotta use some of that knowledge for something. There are these items called the Fragrant Branches of Yore, and they serve what I'm going to be calling randomly generated keys. And why am I calling it that? It's because you have no idea what they're meant to open, you don't know where they are usually, you just happen to accidentally run into them. You don't know if all uses are intended on moving forward, or if any are. And by the way, the answer is that there's only 4 needed ones, but you don't know which ones those are. Metroid Dread is not nearly as bad as that, because you usually have some expectation of, oh, if I got an upgrade for something, 1, that upgrade itself should do something for me. 2, if I can't get it, it's because I'm just not good enough at doing the puzzle. And 3, if it's not optional, it's because it's a beat you were meant to experience now anyways. Number 2. This game really drives the need for proper inputs from a manufacturer of controllers that have drift, and from the mindset that drift does not exist. I don't think that's why things got messed up with the attempts that I was doing, but the E.M.M.I parry and the spin boost are needlessly sensitive moves. Given you stop running into the E.M.M.Is at one point, and the last one's essentially a freebie, the parry isn't the worst part, but that spin boost, this is the definition of overly complicated. You need to time and space out your jumps a specific way to make them work, and I do not see the reason they couldn't have just been a regular double jump. The section intended on teaching you that the behavior is submerged in water. I got stuck on that and had to Google it because I thought I was doing something wrong. There is no indication that the spin boost is this jank, and you just have to learn as it happens. Eventually I understand why, once you get the space jump upgrade, where spamming the jump button would impact a lot, but I would say make it so this second variant should only be on the infinite jump, and let it just be a normal double jump for the one before that. That's something that would be much easier. You could communicate in the details for the space jump transition. That'd be far easier. To reiterate though, I think the E.M.M.I parry should have been a bit more friendly. I think its window is just too tight, and I felt there were times where I lost and I didn't do anything different to the times that I won, and that's not really a good experience. Also, parrying underwater is trash. There's probably a method for it. I just couldn't pick it up. Number 3. Okay. This is going to be the hardest sell. I understand that this is a key part of the Metroid series design. It's this. The idea of things being shut off either due to a lack of knowledge, a random hole or trigger, or an ability you haven't gotten yet. But the new abilities just start to feel uniform and uninteresting, either due to a lack of them feeling unique on their own, or the actual thing they allow you to do feels solely to allow you access to something that you weren't able to do earlier. And that sounds vague, but let me give a specific. The wide beam, first example of this. I don't think this should have been used to open doors, but I think in combat it's a pretty good idea. I wish it was something within the wide beam. And I know some people are gonna say this is the equivalent of semantics, so it's not gonna really mean that much. But I wish that each of the doors that you could shoot through had like a power gate, and every time you got like a new beam upgrade, it would just add more power to that power gate and it allows you to open it. So that way there's no visual representation. It's just you try shooting, you're like, and then maybe like it gives off like a noise response saying, hey, this beam isn't strong enough. I think that would stay a lot more in universe, and it wouldn't feel nearly as annoying just to see, oh god, I don't have that color beam on my thing, time to go leave. I don't know. I want the experience of, dang it, alright, and then walking away rather than being like, oh god, more colors. Because at some point it starts to feel like, why are these all beams? But anyway, I'm going on a tangent. I will say an example of a beam being fine and doesn't open new doors is the diffusion beam. It satisfies the requirement of getting a new ability that opens more areas, but in a way that feels essential and useful. And something to clarify about though, when I'm using the term upgrade, I'm referring to the major upgrades and not the minor ones. Which I'll be honest, just so I say it, I think those ones are too excessive. I think they should have done the capping at 99 or like 198 or 151. 275 is so unnecessary. You're not going to use all those. They aren't even fun to get after a while outside of a satisfying noise. But I do think like the plus variants of these tanks and the health containers are perfectly fine rewards. The full containers, I think the smaller ones, it feels too Zelda-y for me. Solely focusing on the major upgrades though, my issues is just about the beam upgrades being a boring gating method. But even with like the better items though, the reason I still hold them to be uninteresting is just how much it starts to feel like you're missing something and you have to go somewhere else. This is the section I have the most internal conflict writing, given how many people could feel a completely different thing than me from accidentally doing sequence breaks, from just trying a whole bunch, or, you know, using a guide, or just whatever differentiates their experience. My experience felt quite fixed, and I'm aware that this isn't like an absolute, like it could have gone differently. It was a big problem for me though, and it did dull down the second half significantly, especially with the next point, number 4. Okay, this one's probably gonna be the least contentious. I think some bosses are great, and I won't be using specific examples because outside of not willing to do the research for that, I don't need to. If you played the game, you know what bosses bang and what don't. In the same way that you should also know which ones are sponges or not, but that one is a bit different because I think with the aspect of sequence breaking, the idea of sponge bosses kind of goes away a bit. The issue is if you don't sequence break, as many probably won't on their first and crucial run. I also feel like the second half is ruined due to a lack of creativity. Now, not in areas, but obviously as I'm talking about bosses, I don't just mean the major bosses, I also mean that the lesser bosses, some of them just feel like regular enemies that are getting a promotion. What's funny though is that 2 of them actually are those, but they feel like they're done in a tasteful way, so I have no problem with those. The ones that I feel are excessive are the second Robo Chozo soldier. I'm surprised I got that in one go, and every other Chozo, okay, yeah, there it is. Every other Chozo soldier encounter after the first one, and the dual battle, and the central units. I think every E.M.M.I encounter works independently. The issue is that seeing so much repetition in those bosses, seeing it in others, really drags down all of them. If the Chozo soldiers and central units had a bit more spice to each of their situations, it would have been perfect. I think the idea of there being multiple Chozo soldiers is an interesting concept within itself. Same thing with the central units. But the central units are quite literally the same thing, and the Chozo soldiers might just be stronger per interaction. I just don't think that's good enough just to do at the latter half of the game when everything earlier on doesn't have that repetition as ingrained in it. Now this one is a pretty substantial issue for me. The game can't decide if it wants to beat me up or give me a slap on the wrist. The amount of recharge stations can feel disorienting, along with that real crisp E.M.M.I parry window. You can play through the entire game, barely feeling the effects of the upgrades, but I was already talking about that. The sponginess of the bosses, also talked about, but you spawn right back in front of them, but sometimes you gotta do some arbitrary thing, like re-bomb the walls to get in, or something that takes a genuine moment to do, and that slows down the re-entry of the battle, and that's so annoying. Just spawn me back in there. I get why they didn't want to do that though. They want to give you the ability to leave and do something else, but there should be some option to click that says like respawn or go back a bit. There's a decent amount of games that do that, and that's what I need. But that's not the only issue. I think the E.M.M.I AI is great, but I think the AI for some bosses is idiotic. The Chozo soldiers particularly stick out for that, but that could just be my experience. Sometimes you could die a ton to a certain boss, just trying to figure out what the boss does, and what the consequence is there to losing than just being back where you started. I think, and this might be a tough sell, that upon boss death, you have to return to that save station and not right in front of the boss room. This could also get associated with the boss having a bit more predictable patterns, but I think that would be an easy change. You gotta master getting back to the area so you could beat the boss in one go. Yes, I know I'm sounding like Dark Souls now. But with this philosophy, this would justify the recharge stations a bit more, and if this is what hard mode is, I think that should have just been a universal thing. There's enough save locations for this concept to not be punishing. Going back to that Dark Souls history I brought up at the beginning, with how brutal those games can be, your soul count and levels are valuable, because they can be lost. And I'd also debatably say that the Dark Souls bosses are universally more fair than Metroid Dread's worst cases. The point of Dark Souls is a quick and brutal, but usually fair death, obvious exceptions. And with a cost to death, you simply learn that you have to handle yourself in a way that will get you to survive, and sometimes you'll still lose. In this game, there's no real expectation set to expect such odd balancing acts. One boss I figured out in 3 goes, and some of the other ones took an absurd amount of time for me to be like, what's happening here? Now, that will be everyone's unique experience. Cool, but I think people can at least agree some of these bosses did not need as much health as they did. The times I did die on the easier boss was usually only due to like a lack of coordination, not really a problem the game set. It's my fault, and I like those situations. I don't think they should be all of them, but I did like it that when that was the situation. Other times I died a million times, but only because the AI just scorched my health in an attack I wasn't even ready to experience. And that's fine, because you know, I think that type of lessons can be taught. But after a while, when it's like, dang, like you have to learn how to like dodge and get good. And I guess I beat the bosses enough that I never really felt like I got much better, but I guess that could just be the Souls experience. There's no real moment to sit down and learn the output of the enemy that isn't just repeated deaths. And I think that this game is more difficult than every Souls game. And that might sound insane. Most people at least have admitted to this game being difficult, so I think I could at least run with this idea. Because though a Souls game will take you much longer to beat, once you beat one, they all become more easy and more fun to play. This game's difficulty is either frustrating or overly lax. This feeds into my notion of it being frozen in time or returned to form. This game is almost designed in a world where nobody has done this idea better. Like, these guys are the kings of the Metroidvania formatting. Since I think saying the Metroid style, there's a lot more of an argument there. But Metroidvania style of gameplay, or I think I said formatting, but it happens to exist in a reality where people have done it better, even outside of, now I'm referring to Dark Souls, but you could say Hollow Knight, I don't know if you'd count like something like Shovel Knight, but anyone, Axiom Verge, there's so many games where people have tried this style and they've had major success, especially because Metroid has been gone for so long. So I think it just needs to understand that it does have to look at those games to see what are they cutting that they keep in. Because I don't think Hollow Knight or Axiom Verge feel like too bad in their gameplay. To be fair, I haven't beaten either though. But for how much people love Hollow Knight, I think I can stand by that. And I haven't heard any disses against Axiom Verge. No, just an additional thing that I think would be interesting though. I don't know if I had my Dark Souls experience, I would have ever realized how much that game series is fair. Because compared to something like this, I don't think it's as fair. I think that death having a consequence, but also an easier boss, or an easier way to learn your boss. It's a lot more of engaging gameplay. I think it would have been a lot more interesting, because realistically, Samus, the idea of her doing this all in one go just doesn't really work. Maybe if they set up something where it's like, hey, when her armor explodes, the Metroid DNA is what keeps her respawning, like the old, like the enemies in Metroid 1. I think I would have liked that idea. But no, it really is just, nah, you gone. And I would have liked the idea of like the E.M.M.Is, when they kill you, some other effect happens. Or maybe, I don't know. Just something like that I think would be cool. Now, for the conclusion, is there more I could say? Yeah, probably. I'm not 100% sure I covered everything I wanted to in detail. But I think I'm already going to be challenged with the points I have here, so I'd rather come back to this game and like change my opinions, just giving it another go down the line. But just to reiterate, I said it's a 7 out of 10. Metroid Dread, to me, is also a sign that more Mercy Steam Metroid titles, please. Because though I have my issues with it, so many people just love this game overall. I just want them to look at some aspects of the game and make it better. Make the Super Metroid remake. It's worth it. Or do the Game Boy titles on a console, please. That would be incredible. I don't know how long this game took to make. Use the same engine, you will be fine. Or maybe change the engine a little bit. I would like more color in a future Metroid title.
Okay, I'll be honest, I have no idea what I'm talking about. What do I mean more color? Anyway, ignore him.
See any other review for proof. I think as well, though, that Mercury Steam did do Metroid justice. I just have some issues with some aspects of it that I just want them to look at. That's all I'm looking for. I hope this resurgence in 2D Metroid is something that we see in full console versions of Zero Mission and Fusion. Milk these guys, Nintendo. Please. To close out this video, though, I hope you guys that are really big fans of the game can understand my critiques and see them as approachable, because I don't want to act like, I know I complained far longer about what I didn't like about the game. That's just the design of the video I wanted to go with. But this is a great game that only made me want more. I critique it because the aspects of it that I liked were super engaging, and my annoyances could simply just take another run to get rid of. But I don't disagree with anything I say here. And since this game makes me want more, I think it's the aspect of every great game. If you get to the end of it and you feel satisfied, that's good too. But 7 hours? It felt so much longer, for better and for worse. I just want more from this team. And to be clear, I didn't even play Samus Returns, so I did hear there were more issues there.
Hey, by the way, something I noticed while I was making this video, did you guys notice that, like, so many things in this game, if you watch King K's video on the evolution of 2D Metroid, he makes a lot of comparisons to AM2R. Does anyone notice how many of those are just in this game? Wait, no, I just got done critiquing this game. I can't start more bonfires. Alright, sorry. No, guys, I gotta go. Thanks for watching. Please don't hate me.